Hello, American Witch Tour. Stephanie here, coming in with your next installment on the Wheel of the Year. We are coming out of Ostara. We are enjoying the spring, all of these beautiful new colors and life popping up around us, and heading into the next stop on our Wheel of the Year, this cycle of the sun. We will be coming up on Beltane. So, Beltane, the name Beltane, is Celtic in origin, meaning this was celebrated in England, Ireland, and Wales, primarily, this kind of festival. And this is one of the four Celtic fire festivals that I had talked about before, those being Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, and Samhain on November 1st. So, these four fire festivals that Gerald Gardner kind of borrowed from the Celts and mixed in with some other rituals and practices that he had found. These four fire festivals really represent, in the Celtic lore and folklore and traditions, not so much this agriculture like planting season and harvesting season that we see focused so much on in the Wheel of the Year. For the Celts, they were much more, these four fire festivals really represent more how they work with animals. They were herders. They had the sheep and the ewes and the cattle that they were working with. And that's more what these four fire festivals focus on, as opposed to like this harvest schedule that you would see more with the Anglo-Saxon festivals. So the two big festivals for the Celts, these four fire festivals, the two really big ones were Beltane and Samhain. They were kind of this May 1st, November 1st celebration to mark the two halves of their year. And then Imbolc and Lunasa are kind of like those midway points, also representing different things when it came to the animals that they were herding. But these two festivals, May 1st and November 1st, Beltane and Samhain, really, like I said, break up their year into two different parts. And they're kind of opposite. Well, they are opposite. And they have a lot of similar lore to them. So we'll dive right in. So Beltane is May 1st, like I said, and this would be the beginning of summer. This would mark the beginning of summer for the Celts. And the custom was, what the celebration was basically they were taking their cattle and their herds and their animals. I don't know if they had cattle in Ireland, but they were taking these animals out to their summer pastures where they would be in the summertime. So they were taking these cattle from home and they were bringing them out into these summer fields. And in order to ensure that they were safe, ensure that these cows were going to produce a lot of milk, the sheep, all of these different types of things, they would have a lot of this festival. They would have this fire festival to kind of ensure that for this beginning of the year for them, beginning of this summer season for them. So when we think about Beltane, I know that I think about fire, I think about fertility, I think about sexuality coming out. It's very colorful, it's very vibrant. And that would have no doubt been this Beltane festival of the Celts. So the night before Beltane, the night before May 1st, it was very common for them to have a huge bonfire, which we'll get more into where bonfire comes from with the Samhain video, but they would have a huge fire. And this fire was thought to be very sacred, no doubt coming, that connection with fire and the sun, this summer part of the year. And it was customary practice for them to have two very large fires, and they would walk the cattle through these fires, through the two fires, where the fire was, and the smoke and all of the things that were in the fire, which we'll get to, were thought to protect the cattle. They were thought to make them thrive, be fertile, have good milk production, all of the things that they would need to keep them safe, happy, and healthy throughout this summer year, this summer season. And the people also took part in this. It was very common for people to obviously be at these bonfires, to have these huge celebrations, to share food with one another, to celebrate and come together this beginning of the season, this summer season for them. And protection was such a big deal at Beltane, just like it is at Samhain, because the belief in the Celtic lore was that these times of year, May 1st and November 1st, where this season officially shifted, was when the other world, the veil between these worlds was very thin. You might here referred to as the Fae or the unseen. I am not going to even try and pronounce all the different Celtic and Gaelic variations of the unseen, but basically the fact that the spirit world, because things were changing, this veil was thin and this spirit world was very easily accessible. So over time, Solomon becomes more associated with the dead and, well, New Age. And then Beltane is a lot more associated with the Fae and fairies. But it would have been any unseen spirit, whether that be ancestors, undead, the Fae, whatever it is that you're talking about. But basically these unseen spirits. And they were available to come and mess with you. They were not the Tinkerbell that we know. They were pretty tricky, can be very nasty, and can really ruin someone's crop or herd for the season, and even your home and the people in it. So that's why these fires on the eve of Beltane were so prominent, right? The eve is usually thought to be the time when ill works are afoot, right? It's the eve of the day when there is trouble and malefica to be found. And we'll get more into that later. So we talked about these fires, right? They're driving the cattle through these fires. People are dancing around these fires. It's customary for people to jump over these fires. The smoke was thought to be purifying. The things inside the fire were thought to be holy and purifying as well. It was also common practice to have families kind of extinguish their hearth fire in their home and then use the fire from Beltane to relight that, kind of get that fresh life, that fresh sun, that summer energy into their home and officially be done with the dark half of the year. Also, leaving offerings to the Fae, like I had mentioned before, the Fae were thought to be extremely tricky when it came to dairy products. That is why dairy was left for the Fae so often. So it was very customary to leave out milk and butter and things like that for the Fae. They would pour it out for them. Another big part about Beltane for the Celts, as with Imbolc, like we saw before, is visiting the holy wells of their land, to go to these holy wells first thing in the morning, get there before anybody else, and you would walk around these holy wells sunwise, right? You would start in the east, go to the south, the west, and then the north. You would make that rotation. You might say some prayers. You might leave an offering. But the first cup of water out of that holy well on the morning of Beltane was thought to be very protective. It had a lot of energy and it had a lot of power in it, right? You're taking that water out of the earth. You're getting all of that energy from that spirit of the water and of the earth changing in the season. So they definitely had these pilgrimages to these holy wells. And also we see that as well with the lore of the Beltane dew. This idea of going out early on Beltane morning and collecting the dew off of the plants and the grass and around them and preserving that dew, which that's an awful lot of dew to collect, but also the habit of young women kind of taking that dew off of the plants and wiping it on their face and on their body. It was thought to protect them. It was thought to make them fertile and make them more attractive. So definitely some lore with the dew and the holy wells that the Celts also, love to visit. More with these fires that they were doing on the eve of Beltane. I no doubt these fires would be going for a while, right? It wasn't just on the eve, but on the eve it was much, like I said, much more about protection. It was protecting the cattle. It was protecting the people. It was protecting the land from malevolent spirits that would wish them harm. And one of the things that, looking into history and things like that with a lot of the practices that they have at these fires, was this idea of offering a sacrifice into these fires, like throwing things into these fires. There is a lot of writing and history about where they go to these ancient sites where, Beltane was practiced. And they do find remnants of animal sacrifice at these places. There's a lot of talk about lambs that are sacrificed at these fires and things like that. Making an offering, right, to this fire, this season, to the unseen, to keep them safe. Like, right, you're going to give them an offering, this malefica, so that they leave you alone. And there are some who suggest very long ago that there might have been a human sacrifice. And this is where, Beltane gets its name from the god Baal or Bel. And it comes into that, the Beltane word and this idea of human sacrifice. Some scholars do say did happen at these Beltane fires. I think human sacrifice, as we'll get into more with the Wheel of the Year, does come up at Beltane, this idea of a male sacrifice. So you can research that, dive down that rabbit hole of whether or not there was human sacrifice. But one thing that they still do today, is they make what's called a Beltane bannock. It's like an oat bread, and it's cut up into like a whole bunch of different pieces. And one of the pieces of the bread, this Beltane bannock, is dipped in the ash of the fire. And all the boys kind of get around. They're blindfolded. They don't know what piece they're picking. And whoever picks the piece of the Beltane bannock that has the ash on it, they're the one that has to jump over the fire. And they do it like 3 times, or, however their culture, their town is doing it. But a lot of scholars believe that is kind of like a throwback and a reference to this idea that a man would be chosen at this time, this May 1st time, as an offering to ensure fertility and growth and protection in the year to come. So we will revisit that. Another thing associated a lot with Beltane, is the use of flowers. When I think of Beltane, it's extremely colorful. There are a lot of flowers. It is, you have the maypole, and you have flower garland and all this type of stuff. And the Celts as well definitely celebrated this use of flowers at this time. Most commonly used were primrose, rowan, hawthorn, gorse, and hazel, and marigold. I know that especially when it comes to primrose, the idea that is if you line primrose around your house, that the fae cannot cross the primrose. But a lot of these plants and things, they have these very yellowy, white, beautiful, vibrant flowers, and are kind of like this time of year growth. And they would decorate their windows and their doorways with these flowers and kind of entice the sun, right? You have all of this beautiful yellow out to entice the sun to shine its brightest on this summer part of the year for them. And like I said as well, that primrose can kind of be like a guard for keeping the fae away. They also, when the cows would go out and their animals would go out, around the horns of these animals, they would make these flower wreaths, and they would put them around the cow's neck, hang them on them. They would kind of like don them in these flowers before they went out. And it was to keep that protection of the sun, keep the fertility of the sun, keep all of that warmth and energy on that animal as it went out into the summer pasture, which is really cute. We can see we're also putting on those flower crowns at this time of year. We're putting on that heat of the sun and fertility onto us at this time of Beltane. The May bush. When we celebrate Beltane now, or at least how I have been taught, there's always this maypole. The maypole is Anglo-Saxon. In Celtic lands, it would have been the May bush. And this was usually a thorny bush. A lot of times it was hazel or hawthorn. Basically, it was a tree, like a small tree. And each town would kind of decorate. They would come together and they would decorate this tree together. They would put ribbons on it and they would put flowers on it. And they might write their wishes on it. They would put seashells on it, any type of like beautiful decorative, they would adorn this tree and all of this fiery energy that was coming out in these flowers. It was also common to put maybe candles in them and to light them up. Towns would kind of compete who had the most beautiful May bush, and it was actually common practice for mischievous boys, or maybe girls, hopefully girls, to get together and steal the other town's May bush. So it kind of made this like competition between the clans and the people of the area who could decorate this May bush the best. So it was a tree. It was not a maypole. It was a tree. It was a bush. Like I said, if it had thorns on it, the more the better, right? That protection. And then sometimes as well with this May bush, they would light the whole tree on fire. That would actually be the basis of the bonfire. That would be the basis of the May Day fires. And the thought was, especially in Celtic lore, it's cutting down trees and lighting trees on fire. There was a lot of like tree deity worship, for lack of a better word, when it comes to Celtic lore. And it was considered very bad luck to cut down trees or to damage trees, right? This is like the history of the Druids. The trees were very sacred to them. But May Day was kind of like that one day of the year where this tree spirit was adorned and loved and decorated, but then was kind of sacrificed as well. And the spirit of this tree would bless and protect the people of that town and that village. Again, this idea of sacrifice coming up at Beltane, makes me think of like fattening the pig up for slaughter. Like you're decorating and you're being chosen, but then you're kind of thrown into this fire. But no doubt this importance of the tree is that connection that the Celtic people had, the Druids had, with how important the spirit of the tree was. So depending on what town or village you lived in would depend on the tree that you used. Everybody has different ideas on which trees are good, which trees are bad, what kind of spirit you're going for. So that's the May bush. And then also it was quite common practice as well for the oldest member of the family to actually go and get a branch from that tree and bring it inside of the house. And inside of the house, they would decorate that tree branch and keep it. They would keep it for the whole month of May. They might put candles around it and light it up, kind of a little bit like the Christmas tree. They would bring this branch in on May Day. Like I said, the oldest member of the family, and bringing in that tree spirit, decorating it, adorning it, and really encouraging the light of the fire of the sun to take place and bless and protect their home. That's that for Beltane in Celtic Ireland and Scotland and Wales. There is a lot more that we could go into with that, but I think I'll leave it there. But I think that it's interesting that that is not really how we celebrate Beltane today with the Wheel of the Year. Like I said, it's much more about appeasing the fae, appeasing the spirits. That veil is open, just like it is at Halloween, and decorating that tree outside, blessing the animals before they go out into their summer pasture, keeping the home safe, and really this protection from these maleficent, like these spirits that would do you harm. That there was really a lot that was up to no good on the eve of Beltane, just like we would see on Samhain, November 1st, the eve of that. These ghouls and spirits that wish us harm, everything is more available to us. So that eve of Beltane would have been very protective, and then the day of would have been decorating, adorning, colorful, yellow, white flowers, and just beauty, with the dew and the wells, and really this celebration of bringing these animals out and sending them out to their summer pasture. Now, where we have a lot of our celebrations of Beltane today come from really the May Day celebrations. That's a kind of a Christianized version. Well, they say it's a Christianized version of the day, but the May Day celebrations in Anglo-Saxon England are a little bit more different than the Celtic celebrations of Beltane. This would have been kind of like this, the whole month of May was a celebration in Anglo-Saxon England. Well, really, and also in Celtic lands as well, but the May Day, May, Maya, the maiden, Mary, right? The month of May has always been, it comes from this month of the goddess, this month of the goddess coming alive. April showers, spring, May flowers, right? This is when the goddess is open. She's out. She's beautiful. The trees have their buzz. They have their flowers. There is so much life and energy and activity. The earth is fully alive for the month of May. And this is where we see, like I said, a lot of these May Day customs come from. It wasn't a fire festival. It was more a celebration about the fertility of the earth and not so much about protecting the animals in their home. This is where in old parts of England, you get the habit of, or the ritual of having sex in plowed fields. This would be a time when the farmers, people would get together and they would have sex in these fields and kind of like show the dirt what it was, what's meant to happen here. This is as without, so within. Like, we're going to show this field how to do it. So it has, and its very core and its very simplest, like folklore, a very sexual union of this male and female going on at this May Day, right? May, the month of the maiden. The earth is beautiful and shining and mature and ready, right? It's not that springtime energy of Ostara. And with this kind of like fertility magic, one thing for me that I really wanted to focus on when it comes to the Anglo-Saxon celebration of May Day is you have this introduction of the May Queen. Um, the May Queen is, she kind of chooses the May King. They come together, they ride off. There's a lot of lore and folklore, like history, poems of this May Queen on a white horse choosing her May King. He is on a dark horse, and they ride off into the woods together to kind of consummate that union. And then from the fact that this May King was chosen by the May Queen, this is where he gets his power from. It is having the May Queen choose him. She is bestowing her blessings, the blessings of the goddess, this month of May, onto this king. And from his union with the May Queen, he is allowed to flourish. He is allowed to thrive. He is celebrated. He is blessed in abundance and riches. And all the things that go along with having the goddess kind of pick you, right? You would have this goddess of fertility and abundance take you as her lover, her consort, and like I said, bestow those blessings on him. This is kind of a nod back to when you look at Anglo-Saxon stuff. It's a lot of it is very Nordic, and this kind of idea of the May Queen and King riding off together and creating fertility. This comes from Freya and her twin brother Freyr. Freyr. And Freya and Freyr, that's actually Nordic for Old Nordic for the lady and the lord, which is where we get a lot of that term in Wicca. Gerald Gardner used that lord and the lady, very heavily Nordic, right? Freya is Old Norse for lady, and Freyr is Old Norse for lord. So those two, these twin brother and sister, kind of come together and they create that fertility magic together. And they have, they travel off and they create that. And that's where you get that abundance from. So you can see how that is represented also with the May Queen and the May King. Other things with the May Queen, which is really interesting, is over time, this kind of changes where the May Queen picks this May King to bestow her blessings upon. When you get more into like medieval times in Europe, you have this knighthood that arises where it's this chivalry where the knight fights for the honor to be the May King. And it's this kind of shift where in order to become the May King, you have to kind of defeat all of the other suitors. And sometimes in lore, to be the May King, you would have to slay the previous May King of the May Queen in order to get that power and that abundance and that fertility and that health and that protection that the goddess, the May Queen, was going to offer you. And a lot of people say, interestingly enough, that this is actually the story of Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot, where, as you can see in the story of King Arthur with Guinevere, there are a lot of people trying to get their hands on Guinevere. Arthur is constantly having to go back and get her. There are men from all over, Maligan especially, who is trying to get their hands on Guinevere. And it's like, why is everybody trying to get their hands on Guinevere? There's no other princess. But Guinevere is kind of like this example of the May Queen. And in order to have a successful kingship, in order to be the king, the May King, you have to have the blessings of the May Queen. You have to have that queen, the May Queen, this goddess of May, bestow those blessings upon you. So you have Arthur being victorious. He is the May King for a while, and he is abundant. And it's King Arthur. I mean, he is just the height of being a king. And then along comes Lancelot. It's this new May King that kind of knocks off the old May King. And then there's a whole bunch of different stories of what happens with Guinevere and how that's worked out. But that is a very British Anglo-Saxon way of looking at this relationship of the May King and the May Queen. And then also that idea of eventually that this May King is not going to be forever, but unfortunately will have to be sacrificed at some time, which we see come up also on the Wiccan Wheel of the Year. We'll get to that. So also when it comes to Anglo-Saxon Beltane or May Day, you don't really see a heavy focus on the bush, this May bush that you saw in Celtic lands. This is where you get the maypole from. Again, it's very fertile this May Day. This is definitely this coming together of the male and the female. And you can see that very clearly when you have an extremely large phallic pole plunged into the earth. So this is a huge, huge visual representation of the May King coming together with the May Queen. And this pole, this huge pole, would be decorated with flowers. This crown would, even some places, the crown would come down the flowers and go down the whole maypole, which is extremely, that combination of male and female coming together. And then you have this custom of men and women coming together and children and everybody kind of dancing around this maypole, having a huge feast and singing and dancing and celebrating together, and very colorful. And then it turns, people will kind of pair up and wander off into the woods like the Lord and the Lady, like the May King and Queen, Frey and Freya, where they would get together and enjoy the sexual kind of nature of May Day, this month of the goddess, this month of the maiden. Definitely kind of roll off into the woods and come home in the morning, and there was really no judgment. This is definitely this kind of debauchery that went on in villages. And a lot of people think that this actually goes back to the Roman festival of, oh my God, what is her name? Flora. It's like Floralina. I'm saying that wrong. But the goddess Flora in Rome, her festival was during the month of May as well. And Floralia, I think it's called, something like that. You'll have to Google it. But it's this idea that this also comes. So it was a Roman festival to celebrate this goddess Flora. And they had, a lot of times in Roman festivals and Roman worship, they always had white cloaks on or white robes. But during this festival for May, for this goddess, this Flora goddess, they were extremely colorful. And it was a carnival, and there were games, and there was a lot of like fake gladiator fights, like for entertainment. And there was a lot of like just shenanigans going on. It was a feast. People were throwing lentils and beans at each other for prosperity and abundance. And it was also very common practice for the prostitutes in Rome to dance naked throughout the streets, and kind of representing that floral maiden for the month of May. This very colorful, very sexual, very vibrant, very fertility type celebration and magic. So you can see the echoes of that also in this Anglo-Saxon celebration of May Day. Now, another thing that when I think about how these come together and how it's celebrated today, when you have the Wheel of the Year and you have this idea May 1st that it's celebrated, for the majority of people, Wiccans or whoever is following the Wheel of the Year, we are not ushering out our cattle into their summer pastures, but we are kind of still remembering those themes that have to do with fire, that have to do with the energy of the sun right now and the abundance of the earth. Now, whether you're using that Beltane fire and pulling from the Celts with this idea of protection, this idea of sustenance, this flame, inviting the sun into your home, really working with that fire of protection, or in kind of like this more Wiccan fashion where you have Beltane represents the coming together of the Lord and the Lady. And it's really, we're using that Celtic word Beltane, but they're really pulling from the Anglo-Saxon May Day. This is when the Lord and the Lady get together and the lady gets pregnant. This is an awesome time for fertility magic. There is a lot of modern day revivals of dancing around the maypole. I know at our Beltane retreat, we will be dancing around a maypole. But this idea of coming together, it is very sexual in nature in Beltane. This is this celebration, like I said, of the god and the goddess coming together, the Lord and the Lady. And I, for one, love that. I love this idea of following a craft and a deity that is sexual, that has a goddess, that they come together, that they're equal, that there is no manipulation, that this is a beautiful time of two people coming together and creating so much abundance. And for me, in the Wiccan Wheel of the Year with Beltane, that's what that means to me. It is showing up colorful. It is showing up in bloom. It is showing up available for partnerships. And that could be romantic. But it could also be creating anything together, creating a business together, going after your passions, your pursuit of, art or whatever it is that you're trying to create, really harnessing into that energy of being in bloom, blossoming, coming out, and leaning on your community and each other in a way of celebration, right? This dark half of the year is over. It's over. We are in full swing. The earth is alive, it is green. We have this gorgeous awakening of the earth around us, the goddess, and the goddess bestows upon us all so many gifts. We can all be the May King, hopefully not sacrificed, but we can all step into that role of creating with the goddess. We can all step into that role of having that, like I said, that communion of the male and the female, the Lord and the Lady coming together, and what that creates. And like I said, that could be dancing around a maypole. That could be writing ribbons, your wishes on ribbons and tying them to trees. That could be making your own May bush in your yard. That's an excellent thing that I like to do with my children. Decorate a tree with flowers and ribbon. If you're doing it in the woods, don't leave anything fake that the animals aren't going to want to eat, but really embracing the beauty and the life and the passion and the heat and the fire and the transformation that takes place during this whole month of May, where, like I said, people are coming together. We're out of our homes. We are celebrating. We are in full swing. And this is a really gorgeous time of year to celebrate being with each other and that personal connection, and, really leaning into what that means and all that's created when this May King and Queen come together, and all of the beauty and abundance that comes from that. So continuing though with the Wheel of the Year, just a little precursor. Gerald Gardner did keep this little bit of human sacrifice alive in his Wheel of the Year. And it is a Wiccan kind of tradition with this Wheel of the Year, these pagan beliefs that this May King, who is picked by the May Queen, and she bestows upon him her blessings, right? Her beauty, her bounty. The price that the May King pays for that is that at the end of the year at Lammas, Lunasa, this idea of, or even Samhain, this idea of the May King being sacrificed more often at Lammas, right? The Lammas King. This is the May King. He was adorned and loved and was with the goddess and was chosen, but his time is short. Season is over, buddy, and now it's your sacrifice, the sacrifice of this chosen May King, where he will be sacrificed and his blood is given to the earth as a thank you for all that the earth has blessed upon this May King. So definitely keeping in, like I said, line with that sacrifice that goes along with the Celtic celebration of Beltane. So I just want to leave. So that's kind of like that celebration, right? You have that marriage of the Celtic Beltane and the Anglo-Saxon May Day, and then kind of like the mashing together of the name and Nordic and Roman and all of these things kind of coming together with this very neo-pagan celebration of the beginning of summer. And like I said, that means stepping out, being beautiful, showing up in the world, being in bloom, letting go of that dark half of the year, celebrating being together, but also knowing that, what goes up must come down. And I know the May King knows that pretty well every year. So one thing I did want to leave you with to finish out this video is this idea of the eve of Beltane and the eve of May Day. The church really did not like these festivals. They did not like these practices. It was obviously very phallic and very sexual in nature, even with the maypole. And May was often regarded by the church as the month of the witches, and just a heavy association with the goddess and fertility magic and all of the things that kind of go along with that. And it was very common practice all over Europe not just in Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales. We see this in Germany, we see this in Czech, we see this in Finland and Sweden, and going into Eastern Europe. This idea of the eve of May Day, this gorgeous, and I just only touched on a little bit, but cultures all over the world celebrate the coming alive of the earth in May. And as always, the eve is reserved for the wicked. And um, today, that's often known as Walpurgisnacht, right? That is a German word for the night before Walpurgs, which is, it's Saint Walpurg. Her feast day is May 1st. She is a Catholic saint who was thought to be able to heal the sick, keep vermin and mice away, and also was a very good saint to work with when you wanted to rid yourself of witches. So it's funny that the eve of her feast day was May 1st, and the eve of her feast day is supposed to be this day when witches are running amok. They probably made her feast day May 1st because it was already happening, and they just fit together really well. Walpurgisnacht, though, the night before Walpurgis Day, is a time when it was believed that the witches and demons and the devil would get together at the tallest mountain in Germany, and they would have their Sabbath there. This is when these witches and these demons and Malefica would get together, and they would feast, and they would have sex, and they would trade secrets, and they would learn from the devil. And this is where the witch got all of her, dark information and magic and dark arts. And this is true in the Czech Republic, in a lot of the Slavic countries. It's literally referred to as the witches' night, the night before May 1st. April 30th is like the night of the witches. In our culture in America, we often think of that as Halloween, the night before Samhain on November 1st, but the Celts knew this too, which is why that protective fire was always on the night before. They called them the unseen, the fae, or the spirits, but in other parts of Europe, Germany and Scandinavia, Finland and Sweden and the Dutch and all that, it really got, over time, it got referred to as this night where the witches were out. So you can see this celebration of Walpurgisnacht, or variations of it, all throughout Europe. More so, like I said, moving out and from like Germany into the Czech Republic and Hungary and things like that, where you're moving out into those countries, and kind of all the things that they do to protect themselves from these witches and these demons and these evil spirits that are out to cause trouble on the eve of this May Day. They would have bonfires. They would make sacrifices. They would throw things into these bonfires to keep the witches away. They would light them. They would do incantations over them. They would dance around them. They would light their home up. They would do things, make loud noises and bang to kind of scare these evil spirits away. They would do everything that they could to prevent these witches and these demons from coming into their home and messing with them during this very important, fruitful part of the year. A lot of modern day celebrations, when you get together for Walpurgisnacht, especially in Germany and, like I said, in other parts of Europe like that, you'll have kids and adults even dressing up as witches or dressing up as scary things and demons and running around and causing all sorts of mischief. Kind of like how we have here with Halloween, right? This All Hallows Eve. So just a little food for thought there if you want to kind of research that, this idea of the witches' night before Beltane. Like I said, the eve of any holiday is always reserved for evil doing or bad acts or kind of hush-hush activities that you wouldn't see on the day of this beautiful celebration. And that's even held true, I know, in Italian traditions. It is very common for stregas to only be able to teach certain things on Christmas Eve. That is when I learned from a strega in South Philly how to do certain things and read certain ways, and how she interacted with her materia and all the tools that she used in her practice and the incantations that she used. I had to go on Christmas Eve, which is a hard thing to do when you're Italian, to get away. But so yeah, that is my video on Beltane. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned about the Celtic origins of Beltane. I hope you learned about the Anglo-Saxon origins of May Day, the May Queen and the May King. I hope I kind of introduced you maybe or reminded you of how the veil is thin the night before May 1st, just like it is the night before November 1st, and all sorts of mischievous things are out there. And whether or not you want to spend the night before May Day protecting yourself from Malefica, or I don't know, maybe participating in it and flying off and learning something you didn't know before. Either way, I'll leave that up to you. So I hope you found this video helpful, informative, piqued your interest. I wish you all the best researching and folklore that you can find, and have a blessed Beltane. Thank you.